This is Robin Wilson, host of The Education Connection, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Each show on the network is independently owned, and the views expressed may not represent those of other podcasts. For the best education podcast, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 269 of the House of EdTech podcast, I have a fantastic thought about vibe coding. I've got a EdTech recommendation from NASA, and more importantly, I've got a great conversation with a high school teacher who is using AI with their students. And it was a great conversation, and I think there's a lot of insight for you if you're considering using AI with your students. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech. My name is Chris Nesi. The House of EdTech launched in 2014, giving me the opportunity to speak with teachers, leaders, and creators so you can more effectively integrate technology, strengthen your pedagogy, and have more confidence in your classroom and school so you can make an impact. Get involved with the podcast by visiting my website, chrisnesi.com. Using technology isn't difficult, and this is where it begins. This is the House of EdTech. So excited that you are here for another episode of the podcast. A great opportunity for some anytime, anywhere professional development. If you're a new listener, welcome to the show. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. We're going to get into this episode, as I said just a few seconds ago. Today I'm talking a little bit about vibe coding. That's my EdTech thought, which is a fun feature that I always do here on the podcast, giving you my opinion, my thoughts on something that I've read, seen, watched, or just something that is top of mind. And today it's going to be about vibe coding. I've got a really cool EdTech recommendation, as I said, from NASA, so you don't want to skip over that. And I've got a fun conversation I had with Arizona high school science teacher, Tara Altherr. And she's doing some really fun things in her classroom with artificial intelligence. And it's something I've talked about for a number of episodes here over the last couple of years. So again, in my opinion, AI not going anywhere. So what are we going to do with it? We cannot run and hide. We cannot avoid. So we have to lean in. That's my personal opinion. And Tara is doing some really fun things in her classroom. So without further ado, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, and let's kick things off with my EdTech thought. If schools can build their own EdTech, what happens next? I recently read an article in Education Week, and the story making the rounds right now is about a school district in Washington State that decided to stop waiting for education technology companies to solve their problems. And instead, they started building their own tools using AI. And honestly, I think this could become one of the biggest shifts in education technology over the next 3 to 5 years. This district created an AI-powered observation tool called Lesson Lens. Teachers can upload classroom video and receive feedback on instruction. Not feedback from an administrator, feedback from a tool the district itself created. Now, before you panic, this isn't really a story about AI replacing educators. This story is about schools finally asking a question they probably should have been asking for a long time. Why are we spending massive amounts of money on tools that only kind of solve our problems? Because if you've worked in education for any amount of time, you know this cycle. A company builds a product. The product gets marketed and as it's transformational. District leaders buy it. Teachers maybe get trained on it. And then teachers spend time in the next 3 years trying to force the tool to fit the classroom instead of the tool fitting the classroom. What struck me most about this article was the quote from Tori Trust, who basically said most EdTech tools are not actually designed by educators. And that's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of education technology is built by people who understand software better than they understand education in schools. But AI coding tools, those are changing the game. Now, anybody with an idea and enough curiosity can build something functional without needing a computer science degree. And I think that changes everything. Think about what this means. A teacher could build a rubric generator tailored to their exact course. A department could build a parent communication assistant aligned with their district's actual language. A counselor could create scholarship matching tools. A principal could develop walkthrough dashboards that actually measure what matters in their building. And not someday, right now. And that's really exciting. But it's also where I think we need to slow down just a little bit. Because education has a habit of confusing possible with good. The article points out that AI-generated code can introduce security vulnerabilities, bugs, and major problems. That matters a lot when we're talking about schools. We're talking about student information, IEPs, health records, assessment data. And I think this is where educators need to be careful not to become so empowered by AI that we forget the responsibility that comes with building technology. Just because you can build an app in an afternoon doesn't mean it should immediately be used district-wide on Monday morning. But there's another layer to this story that I think is even more important. This article quietly exposes something we don't talk about enough. Schools are paying enormous amounts of money for convenience. And now AI is lowering the barrier to creation so dramatically that districts are starting to realize they may not need as many vendors as they once thought. That's a huge disruption. If a district can create internal tools for a fraction of the cost, what happens to the EdTech market? What happens when schools stop asking what products are available and start asking, what problem are we trying to solve? And that's the healthier question. And maybe that's where AI becomes most powerful in education. Not as a replacement for teachers, but as a creativity amplifier for educators who finally have the ability to shape their own solutions. I don't think every school should suddenly become a software company. But I do think the era of schools being completely dependent on outside vendors may be starting to change. And if that happens, the best EdTech companies won't be the ones with the flashiest features. They'll be the ones that collaborate with educators instead of dictating to educators. Because the future of EdTech may not be schools buying tools. It may be schools building exactly what they need. I'd love to know what you think about vibe coding and creating your own tools, especially if you've created your own tools. I recently had Derek Tranchina on the show last episode. He created his own tool. Have you done something similar? I'd love to hear from you or what you or your school is doing. I'll have a link to this article in the show notes, of course. And that's my EdTech thought. So before I get to the conversation I had with Tara Altherr, let's do the EdTech recommendation. And this is a really cool, really simple thing that is great for any time of year, any subject area, any grade level. And this is from NASA, and they've got a web page set up where you can spell your name or really anything, and it does it with satellite images. Now, I've got 2 links in the show notes, which are a swipe or a tap away where you are listening to this episode, or you can go to the show notes page on my website, and that's chrisnesi.com/269. And one link brings you to this page of all of these satellite images that look like letters of the alphabet. Some letters of the alphabet have multiple images where if you look at the image, you see the letter of the alphabet. And I got a link to a second page where you can input your name, a last name, a word, the name of your school, your mascot, whatever, and it will pick the pictures for you. So that comes to us from NASA, and hope you check it out. And if you do something with your name or a word or something, please post it on social media, tag me at Mr. Nessie, pretty much everywhere, X, Blue Sky, email me, feedback@chrisnessie.com. I would love to see what you come up with, and I hope you get some value out of this with your students. And that's my EdTech recommendation. Today, I'm excited to welcome Tara Altherr to the show. Tara is a high school chemistry teacher. She's an AI educator and a conference presenter from Arizona. She believes that rather using AI as a shortcut, we need to advocate for using it as a thinking partner, a tool that supports critical thinking, supports creativity, and enhances learning without replacing the hard work of learning itself. If you've been wondering how to embrace AI while still preserving student curiosity, creativity, and authentic learning, buckle up because we're going to have some fun with Tara today. Tara, welcome to the House of EdTech.
Thank you for having me.
I am very excited that you are here. It's tough to podcast in the summer as a teacher sometimes, and even tougher to find great guests that want to kind of talk shop during the summer months. But here we are. So again, I thank you for taking time today. How is it in Arizona so far this summer?
Well, right now it is currently raining. We had the super hot part, but I guess I took the humidity from Florida and ISTE back.
Did you have a good ISTE conference this year?
Yeah, it was good. I got lucky with how close I was to the conference, so it was easy to get there and easy to get around. The conference center was massive, but it was easy to find where I needed to go at least.
Awesome. I've only been able to attend ISTE when it's been in Philadelphia. I don't really get out of New Jersey much, but it's definitely a worthwhile conference. Did you make connections, make those face-to-face connections and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I did. Last year was the first year I had gone, so I had known some people. But then this year with presenting, I made contacts with even more people. So that was really cool.
Awesome. Well, I hope that someday we get to meet face-to-face, and I think it'll be in Philly again in 2028. So
good.
Maybe we'll get to high five and fist bump in 2 years.
That'd be great.
Let's dive in to, and actually that's weird because, AI talks about, let's dive in. And now, I guess it had to learn from somewhere, right? So let's dive in. You believe that AI is a thinking partner rather than a replacement for student learning. As a chemistry teacher, someone who's in the sciences, what does that actually look like in practice for you?
I mean, obviously I use it a lot as a teacher, but I think it's just making sure that it's not the simple, go straight to the answer thing. I had two assignments that I really had students use AI with, and they were using it basically to bounce ideas off of. One of them, they were chemistry detectives, and they were having to figure out if different scenarios were physical or chemical changes. But before even touching AI, they had to use it for themselves. And decide based off of what they knew, is this a physical change? Is this a chemical change? Okay, then now have that conversation with AI, with a ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever. What do they say? What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? That kind of thing. So that was one of the assignments that I had them do.
Do you have a preferred AI chatbot that is your go-to, or do you use multiple?
Now I use multiple. I had started initially using ChatGPT. Because my district had a relationship with OpenAI, so they had the education thing, and they had explicitly told us to just play around with ChatGPT. So that was the one that I was most comfortable with. But then in using it, I've been using more of different things. Now, students are supposed to be using Gemini and not ChatGPT. So I ended up doing more with Gemini so that I could see it on their end. And then especially with notebook LMs and whatever. Then I've even done it where it's okay, I use ChatGPT for one thing, but then, okay, I can use Gemini, or I use ChatGPT to make the prompt for an image, Gemini to make the image. Canva AI is amazing too. So using whatever's best for the situation.
I love it. AI app smashing.
Yeah, exactly.
I too bounce around between, ChatGPT and Gemini. Let's shift it to the students. Is there anything else that they are using outside, or is that what you can monitor? How does that work for you and your high school kids?
So, according that came down from the district that students should be using Gemini. I mean, there's always that issue of seeing exactly what they're prompting and whatever, but I also use securely so I can see their screens.
Okay.
So that helps. They also don't like it either because then if they're on ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever, then it's like, hey, why are you doing that? It's not even my class, but is your teacher actually okay with you touching this? And they're like, oh, yeah, this and this and this, whatever. But so I have that at least, but they pretty much that's the main one. Next year, I'll probably do more with school AI just so that I can see more with like prompts and whatever that they're doing.
What is it about these large language models and the chatbots that made you as an educator go, that's good for me? And I guess to some degree, you see it as being valuable for your students. So why don't we start with you? The value of AI to you, how did that come about for you?
Because like I had said, when we have been given the just go play with it, I have a almost 7-year-old and an 8-year-old at home. And so a lot of the playing around started with them of like figuring out of like, okay, when we go travel, what can we do that's interesting for the parents, but that's also interesting for kids. And then after using it with them, or like even like tracking water and whatever, but then it ended up shifting into, okay, I have all this stuff for chemistry. I have all the standards. I have the pacing guide. Help me come up with something. I don't want to just keep doing what I've been doing. I want to make it better. So what can I do? So then I started making the custom GPTs for those different situations.
Now, when you started using it with students, or as you said, your district kind of said, experiment with it. So I imagine they kind of made that available to students relatively quickly as well. What types of conversations or topics did you have to talk about with your students about them using it and how it would work in your classroom specifically?
The freshmen in my district have this class called Freshman Experience, so they get some exposure to AI. But even still, as sophomores, juniors, they come to me and they're still not super confident. A lot of times they know of it or they say they know how to do it, but then they don't necessarily want to do the work, or the AI will give it them an answer and they're like, but I don't understand it. And they're not comfortable like pushing back. Because I think that was one of the things that I learned pretty early on is like, no, you have to push back. You can't just, this is the answer, accept it.
I mean, when I talk about it and have talked about it on the show before, that's that critical thinking piece that we as the humans using our human brain need to interact. And I love the way you put it as we need to push back. We need to question what it's asking us because, you could ask for something. It's going to tell you, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, you should start your shoveling crap business and you could make millions. Like, no, you can't. Yeah. Like, no, that's not a real thing. It loves to tell you you're wonderful, but we got to fight back.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think too, it like pushes it because it makes it, when it does give the answers, it sounds so confident in what it's doing. Like I know when I was doing my presentation or even when they were talking about it at district, it ends up being like AI is that delusional intern. That it's completely confident and wants to help you. It is all the nice and positive, but it's like, okay, well, you're making stuff up here.
How does that work in your classroom with science? Because science is very much, I don't want to say it's black and white, but, there's the scientific method and, you have labs in chemistry. How does the students working with AI fit into what you do in chemistry?
For me, it ends up being because besides the fact that I want them to be just getting comfortable using AI, it ends up being more of like, okay, use it as getting more information. I know that like there was an assignment that I did where they had to come up with, it involved the reaction between baking soda and vinegar. And then a lot of them were using ChatGPT to find the equation, which I was fine with. And then they confidently wrote it down and then they completely forgot what they had learned about naming ions because 2 of the ions were flipped. So if they didn't know, it looked right and it was fine. And then I'd write it down and then I'd grade it and mark them off. And they were like, but miss, why did I get it wrong? Google says this, but okay, remember what we talked about with naming? So like even now, like last year, having to explain it and be like, okay, it will say this, but you have to use what you know to verify. Even if it doesn't necessarily ask, like, is this right or whatever, you're still going to have to use your brain to know.
So when you have them using their brains, and again, the sciences are very much hands-on and minds-on. Obviously, you taught before AI was in the classroom. How has AI changed the lessons you do or the assignments you give? Because, for me as a history teacher, and English teachers alike, we fear assignments that can be just done by AI. So I've had to, step up my game and kind of change the type of work I'm giving. Has that also happened with you and your assignments through the sciences?
Yeah, because some of it, like you said, because it's cut and dried, it's easy if I didn't have the question worded right, and it's the stuff that they were cheating on before anyway, well, now they're just going to use AI to cheat on it because, well, it's just a fact. I can find it. I know even like with stoichiometry and like with the steps of like converting from one thing to another, that one I had to be really careful with because AI would give the answers. And that was one that it initially definitely it was really making stuff up about. But then making sure that like, okay, they understand. Like, why, here's the steps. Fine, you got the steps. But why is it that way? Why is this number on top and that number on bottom? Those units are where they are, that type of thing. And I'm still seeing that because I know I taught one way to find like limiting reactants. And then on the assignments, they'd be like, oh, but this is it. Okay, well, technically it's right, but I still need you to know how do you get from that point to that point? Why are you using those steps instead of like what we did in class?
Right. So that why still remains important.
Yeah. And I think the why is becoming the bigger part. Because even if AI can give answers, give descriptions, you can still tell when it's like, okay, kid, you gave me an explanation, but that's not your explanation. That's just, oh, look, I found an explanation and I'm just going to copy paste it.
One of my favorite parts as a student when I took science, whether it was biology or chemistry or physics, were the labs. Right? The real hands-on learning, the double period, things like that. Does AI play a role in your students' learning in labs in terms of the experiments they do or the lab report part of that experience? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So that's something that I'm still figuring out and that I've been working on. But I also think it helps. That's the type of thing that AI would help me because having to come up with the labs or whatever that are interesting for students that my students can relate to, then that's when AI is great for that, because then I can have that idea and then it can be modified to how I need. Another thing our district has is academies. So like there's kids that are like going on a sports med thing, or there's kids that are like going into construction or graphic design or whatever. So being able to like throw in pieces related to that helps as well. Using AI.
Also along the lines, because again, a couple of times in what we've talked about, you have mentioned, obviously these academies and, the students aren't just taking your class in isolation. So they've got their other subject areas. Is there a unified message or approach that you and your colleagues are using? So, what they're doing with AI in your class, they can transfer those skills and use it in history or math or another subject area.
I think theoretically there is, but like we were talking about earlier, where some teachers are good with using it and then some aren't, there definitely is that discrepancy. And I've definitely had students tell me last year that like, Miss, you're one of the few that's like actually doing something with AI. I think especially now as time's going on and people are realizing more and more that it's not going away, I think it's getting more embedded in other classes, but I still think there's that discrepancy. But then also our district has a framework, which is CARE. So clarity, accuracy, relevance, and ethics. And that's something that I think teachers have done a lot more with. But then in doing a lot of the things with preparing for presentations and whatever, I think I want to have students do more with next year, because it's important for them to look at the stuff and be like, okay, is this actually accurate? Is it relevant to me? Whatever, because then that will help them later along the line too. And then teachers also have the ability to choose how much AI students can use, because there's like a stoplight. And I think that's been becoming more and more common. With like the red is like no AI, and then the yellow is, okay, well, it's teacher discretion, and then green is all in. So I think that helps as well. But again, it's just getting all the teachers on the same page with, okay, use the stoplight or use the framework, and not just, well, it's a thing, but then it just exists in the ether.
For you and anybody who's listening, if you have not listened to episode 268, I had Derek Tranquina on from Traffic Light EDU. Derek talks all about his Chrome Google Classroom plugin that you can add literally a stoplight to your assignments in Google Classroom. So that's really cool. So check out episode
That is really cool.
268. You mentioned the acronym CARE. Now I could ask my listener to rewind, but could you just kind of go through that again, just a little slower, what CARE is and what that all means?
So C is clarity. So is the information clear? AI has been getting a lot better, but there are still definitely times that it's not clear. And then A is accuracy. So is it accurate? AI is getting better, but there's still times that it confidently makes something up. R is relevant. So is it relevant to what we're talking about? That ends up being a big thing, especially in chemistry, because there's high school chemistry and then you go all the way to college. And then if kids aren't careful, students, teachers, whatever, aren't careful with what they're writing, then instead of getting that high school answer, you end up getting the college level answer with all the things that they clearly haven't learned about. And then E is ethics. For teachers, that's more of, or ethical, so more things of like, don't import a kid's entire IEP to use that for accommodations or whatever. Don't put kid names and things like that. So the same thing with students of like, okay, well, how much information are you giving? Don't give all the personal information, like first, whatever. There's some things that are okay, but not everything.
I think CARE is a great way to look at it. And based on what you said, it's applicable towards how students should be viewing it and really anybody.
And like I had mentioned before, even like with my kids, because they, sometimes they'll try to play around with it since I'm using it and they'll be like, oh, but I want to try to add whatever. And then like my oldest daughter put her name and it was like, okay, your first name's fine, but just you remember you don't want to be putting like all the things. And she's like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to worry about it? Yeah, because you don't know what's going to happen next. So it's definitely leading to good conversations.
I love it. Do you have students, and I know that I do, but I just want to see if it's the same in other places. Do you have students that are dead set against it? They want no interest in it, and they're just like, I'm good?
Yes, I 100% do. The big issue that I see is that they're like, oh, but the environmental concerns or whatever. Like I have the concerns about like what it's doing to the environment and I specifically had to tell a kid, I'm like, okay, that's fine, but you also need to understand why I'm having you use it. And then if you're in a group, fine, you don't touch it, but it still needs to be done. Like this is still, I'm not taking it out of the assignment or whatever. And then also figuring out like kids have asked about like, okay, well, how is this cheating? Like, how is this not cheating? That type of thing. That's been coming up more as well.
One thing you just mentioned. So do you have assignments that absolutely require the use of AI? And can you talk about an assignment like that?
Yeah. So like the two assignments I had mentioned earlier, one of them was that physical chemical changes activity.
Right. Yeah.
Where they had to decide first and then they had to use the AI to verify or go against. And then there was another one with, I called it Operation Mole Fallout. And it was like right after I think it was the year after the train in Arizona derailed and there was all the chemicals released. So then I used AI to make this whole extreme thing. There was the chemical derailment. I think there was an issue with the water. There was a fire up north, all the things. So I had to keep being like, I promise this is fake. I'm not taking this actually from the news, kid. But then, so for that one, they had to, because they had been learning about like molar mass and conversions and starting to do that. So they were given a specific compound that they had to find the name for, do the formula for. And again, going back to using AI to either, okay, do you agree with what AI said or did you not? I think they had to balance an equation. That one was a little bit interesting because that was something they hadn't learned about. But I still wanted them to give practice of like, okay, well, what do you think would happen? Okay, now, what does it say it would do? What do you think about those steps? There might have been one other station, but I can't remember. But it was those types of things.
No, that's okay. No, that sounds really good. I love it. In order to keep things balanced, I use AI, you're using AI, you've got students using AI. What are some aspects of your teaching here in, 2026 where you're intentionally keeping AI out and you're still all human?
That's a really good question. I like it. I think for me, it's a lot of the discussions that students are having. If they're using AI, whether they did or not, when they're answering something, okay, then they actually need to talk to each other, because it's so easy for anybody to get stuck behind a screen and just not have that human to human interaction. That's definitely something that I'm still working on, but I think definitely getting them to talk to each other, getting them to get up and move. And okay, fine, you use the AI for this part, but now you're going to have to get up and go over here or go do this other thing. And again, not just sitting and staring at the screen.
I love it. The dreaded human interaction.
Yeah, they hate it.
And I love to do it too. It works well in history class as well. We're getting ready to kind of wrap up this conversation. I have one more, question I'd like you to kind of riff on, but I do want to let the listener know that if you go out to the show notes for this episode, chrisnesi.com/269, I will have a link to Tara's bio, so you can connect with her on LinkedIn, I think you put in, right?
Yeah, I put LinkedIn and Instagram.
Perfect. So definitely connect with her and continue to have those conversations and ask her questions. I know I will, because now we're going to be lifelong, digital friends, and we're going to fist bump in Philadelphia someday.
Yeah, we're going to meet in person in 2 years. We got it on the calendar.
Yes. So make sure that you who is listening, you also connect with Tara, because I've really enjoyed speaking with her, and I look forward to continuing to be connected. As we start to wrap up this conversation, in your view, what is one thing that any teacher should take away from this conversation in terms of using AI either with their students or in their professional practice from your perspective? What is that one thing that an educator should consider?
I think it's kind of a double thing, because I think, like you had mentioned about before, I think intention is super important, especially when there's so many different tools out there. And, you should use this thing and you should use that and whatever, actually thinking and being intentional about what you're using it for. I think that's important. But I think also just the still relying on your own, the teacher relying on their own content knowledge, their own expertise. We still have that. Whatever AI is doing, teachers still have that expertise and know when something doesn't sound right, is when something's made up, whatever.
I love it. Can I sneak one more question in?
Yeah, go.
For the science teacher who's listening, or if somebody who's listening shares this with a science teacher, why should a science teacher specifically consider doing more with AI with their students?
Science can easily just be something that's so cut and dried, so boring. But using AI helps make it more interesting, more engaging, and students have ways to show what they're doing as well, because they have creativity that I think it's so easy for teachers not to tap into, but just be like, we have to get through all these things, all the standards, we have all these tasks. But then having that AI option open helps with that creativity, I think, or giving them that other way to explain what they know.
Tara, thank you so much for the knowledge bombs you dropped. Thank you for being somebody who is open-minded and willing to, it sounds like, to try new things and use AI. That's what these conversations are all about. And I appreciate you taking time here to drop some of these knowledge bombs on my listeners and my community. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. I hope you really enjoyed that conversation with Tara. And again, in the show notes, chrisnesi.com/269, or a swipe or a tap away where you're listening, you can get the link to her contact information, her LinkedIn, her Instagram, and be sure to connect with her. That's going to do it for this episode of the House of EdTech. Let's put a bow on this episode. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the House of EdTech, and I want to let you know that I want to hear from you, your feedback, your ideas, And your questions will make this podcast even better. Do you have thoughts about the conversation I had today? A question about education technology? Let me know. You can listen to a lot of education podcasts, and to be honest, do they really ask for your feedback? Do they really want to interact with you? No. But I, since 2014, seek your feedback, your emails, your voicemails, and I can't wait to hear from you. So just reach out. Let's do this. Let's get connected. Send me that email. feedback@chrisnessy.com. Leave a voicemail. chrisnessy.com/voicemail. Your input, your question, I could feature it on a future episode, and I'd love to dive into the topics that matter most to you. All the links and the resources for this episode are on my website, chrisnessy.com/269, also a swipe or a tap away where you're listening right now. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss future episodes. And if this episode brought you value, share it with a fellow educator and help grow the community. Help make somebody else's experience a little bit better, especially if you know a science teacher, or if you are a science teacher, share it with fellow science educators. And if you want to go the extra mile, maybe consider becoming an awesome supporter. Go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. Want to give a very, very heartfelt thanks and thank you to my current supporters, Leo Calbush, Brian Carpenter, Aaron Cummings, Jeff Herb, and, of course, Matt Miller. The generosity of these fine folks help the show go strong, and you can become a part of this group. Just go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. Coming up next time on the House of EdTech podcast, well, I'm going to be talking about how AI isn't breaking school. I'm going to talk about how it's exposing it. If you want to connect on this topic in advance of the episode's creation, and I haven't released the episode yet, reach out to me, feedback@chrisnessy.com, and give me your thoughts on that statement. AI isn't breaking school, it's exposing it. Let's talk about this. I think there's something to say. I've got something to say, but you might want to add to it as well. So I want to give you that opportunity. All right. Until next time, I want to thank you for learning with me and Tara. And I want you to remember this as always. Using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.